All right, y'all. So welcome back to part 3 or step 3 of this 10-step process of how you are going to get started in your Airbnb business. Okay. So we've already went over the funding, right? So if you're still here, you're here because you've already established that you have the proper funding to get started, or you've decided to partner with someone to join forces on starting this business, right? And then part 2 is that you've already established, or you're in the process of establishing or repurposing a LLC, and getting all the proper systems set up for your business to be legitimate, okay, including that website. So our third step is going to be, now that we're ready to kind of go full force in this, let's go ahead and start doing some research, right? This is what we would consider like the boring part of the process, right? You've got to sit down and decide what location is going to be best for you. Now, I will say is there's nothing wrong with starting where you live. Actually, I would recommend it. It just feels safe, right? To start where you live. Now, on the contrary to that, I'm going to say don't be married to the idea of getting your first unit where you live if the numbers don't make sense, right? Don't try to force that. Never, ever, ever try to force a deal. Okay. So if the numbers don't make sense in the city and state where you live, then you got to move on to hopefully somewhere closer, but if that means somewhere across the country, that's okay too. I live in Los Angeles and I have 2 units in Nashville, Tennessee. So you can make that work. It just go where the money is, right? But if you want to start at home, I would recommend at least starting at home, because that's going to be ideal for you, especially for your first unit. You're going to be nervous, you're going to be excited, and you want to make sure that you can get to that unit quickly if you need to. But hopefully the methods that I'm teaching you, you won't have to go to your units very much, and you won't have to work super hard, except for in the beginning when you're kind of getting used to it, especially as you begin to grow and scale your business. The less you're going to need to go, the more comfortable you're going to get with this whole process. So let's jump right into the research part, right? So what are you looking for when you're actually doing research? So I'm going to make sure that I tag in the description box below a few websites that you guys can be using to conduct research for the areas that you're considering. And I'm also going to do a separate video with a screen share so that you guys can see firsthand what to actually look for. And specifically, I'm probably going to use airdna.co because that's what I use. But there are also other platforms out there that are just as good, if not arguably better. But the point is, all of these websites are just information for you to be able to use, but they are not set in stone, right? They are not law. So just because the website says something, that information is there for you to draw conclusions from the data that's out there, right? So airdna.co uses information from Airbnb, and they pull that information from real live listings to get the numbers that they provide. So I do like to use airdna.co. Okay. So what are you actually looking for when you do research? So there's 2 different ways that you can conduct research, and I'm going to recommend that you use both, especially for your first unit. There's going to be organic research that you're going to be able to just use Airbnb, VRBO, whatever other short-term rental platforms out there. You're going to use those platforms to conduct organic research. Okay. The second one is going to be using platforms like AirDNA and use data-driven research to decide if the location where you're looking to get started is going to be viable and profitable. Okay, so the first thing is going to be looking on airdna.co specifically. You're going to be looking at the occupancy rates, right? So anytime you see an occupancy rate that's out, my rule of thumb is between 75 and 78% and higher. So anything below that percentage of occupancy is going to be kind of hit or miss, right? You may not do very well because 75% occupancy means that you're booked at least 15 to 20 days out of the month. And depending on where you're priced, that should bring you decent profit each month, okay? So you want to be somewhere between 75 and 78 minimum and higher for occupancy rates, okay? And that's going to be the biggest factor that you're going to consider when it comes to deciding whether or not this location or this area is viable. On airdna.co, you can also plug in an exact address. So as you guys begin to look for units, you can go in there and plug in an exact address, and it'll tell you what the it'll give you more specific information about that area if you have an address versus just plugging in a city. So again, make sure you guys tap into the next video where I'm going to do a screen share and show you exactly what to go on this platform and be looking for, okay? So let's talk about this organic research really quickly. So I'm going to use, say, Dallas, Texas for an example, right? And like I told you before, the price point that we discussed in the first video is going to likely be a 1-bedroom. So let's just stick with a 1-bedroom, 1-bath example for right now. You're going to go to Airbnb.com and you're going to search Dallas, Texas. In the filter, you're going to put 1-bedroom, 1-bath, right? Search that on Airbnb.com and put 2 guests or 4 guests maybe, because sometimes with the 1-bedroom, you can have like a pull-out couch in the living room. So the more guests, you know, the better. But we don't want to cram 6 people in a 1-bed, 1-bath. So I would say no more than 4 people, you know, prep your space for no more than 4 people in a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. So let's say we do 1-bed, 1-bath on Airbnb. We search that, we filter it down. What I want you to do is start looking at the properties that are on that first page, right? Seeing what they look like, because this is going to give you an idea of how to start furnishing your unit. Number one, we're going to get into furnishing in the coming videos, but looking at how they're furnishing their units, looking at how they're pricing their unit, and the most important part is looking at their calendar. So you're going to click on their actual listing, right? And once you click on their listing, you'll be able to look at their calendar for the month and see if those units are actually booked, right? So are the dates available or are they not available? And then take it a step further, you're going to look at their reviews. Now, take this with a grain of salt, because again, this is the organic research. Not every guest leaves a review. So just because you don't see reviews for that month doesn't mean that they didn't host stays. It could also mean that the guest just didn't leave a review, and that's okay. But these are just things and cues that you guys can be looking for. So once you look at their reviews, you can see if they have 4 or 5 reviews for what are we in June right now? So let's say we're going to look at May. You can see they had 4 or 5 reviews for May. So they probably were pretty booked in May, right? And 4 or 5 stays a month is about average per month, because the stays are, you know, anywhere from 3 to 7 days. So yeah, if they have 4 to 5 reviews, that's pretty good for the month. That means that they were busy. So these are little cues that you guys can be taking for the research portion. So you've gotten your funding, you've got your business set up. Now you're starting to do some organic research, looking on Airbnb, seeing what the units in the area that you're interested in are looking like. You're looking at how they're priced, and you're also going to use platforms like Mashvisor, airdna.co to start looking at what the data is saying for those cities, okay? So let's jump into the next video where I'm going to conduct a screen share and show you exactly how to use these platforms to get more research information for how to start finding and determining your units. Let's get